This is
What a day.
What a Day.
What a day. What a day. What a day.
What a Day with Joe Lowry.
Hey there. This is WhattaDay with the Sex Symbol Podcast, and today we are talking sex with Joe. So come join us. Hey Joe, what a day.
Hey everybody, welcome to What a Day. I'm Joe Lowry, and happy Wednesday out there. It is officially halfway to the weekend. It is a What a Day Wednesday, and as I like to call it, the week's middle finger. I hope everyone is safe. We had some crazy weather in the Midwest. I hope everyone's okay after that, and hope everyone's safe. And I hope everyone has good plans for this coming weekend. The weather looks pretty good. So, And I want to thank everybody for tuning in live and on the replay. Feel free real quick to hit that subscribe and like button. It's free. Be greatly appreciated. So supporting this channel is as easy as that. Just subscribing and liking the video. I see people are trickling in on the chat and so forth. I will just say right off that we have an interesting show tonight. That's right. We have we're trying to mix it up here at Monty and the Pharaoh channel, and we're doing just that. We're going to be talking about sex. That's right. Nothing like sex talk on a Wednesday night. We'll get to that in a second. I do have a bit of wrestling news related. Not sure if you guys heard that Raw will stay on the USA Network at the end of October. They reached an agreement with TKO and Endeavor. So Raw will stay on the USA Network until they switch over to Netflix in January, which means come this October, for the first time in a long time, SmackDown and Raw will both air on the USA Network. Not sure. I'm sure the days are going to stay the same, but same network for a couple of months until Raw makes that transition over to Netflix. So I wanted to share that with you. That came out about an hour or so ago on the TKO Endeavor's earnings call. So we get the wrestling news out of the way real quick. Jason, RJ, Baby Cakes, Joe Myers, thank you all for tuning in. Hi, Baby Cakes. Maria Davis in the house, the first lady of professional wrestling. So we're going to have a very diverse crowd, hopefully, tonight. But nonetheless, these gals are something. We have one half of the Sex Symbol podcast. Her name is Vida Carey. She's going to come on and give us a peek behind the curtain, so to speak, on how women really view sex when no one else is around. And it's kind of a hilarious thing if you check out the podcast. We're going to get into all that, but this is different. So I'm going to welcome the show. I'm going to bring her on right now. I'm going to love from the podcast, the Sex Symbol podcast. I'm already getting tongue-tied here. Maybe I'm nervous. I don't know. Anyways, let's welcome the lovely Vida Carey. Vida, welcome to What a Day.
Hey Joe, what a day.
Thank you so much for joining us. Where do we begin in this conversation about sex? We all know we like to read about it, like to watch it, but talking about it is, sometimes could be a little different. So first off, what is your background? I know you have a teaching background, so why don't you fill the viewers in on a little bit about your background?
Yeah, I was a public school teacher. I taught high school English and special education for 15 years.
Wow.
And I have a lot of extra training in behavior modification. And as my students graduated, they needed more help after high school, not with sex, but like just life in general.
Okay.
So I became a behavioral coach for ADHD, autistic adults, and then just everybody in general that needed help.
Sure.
And people tell me things like, I guess they feel comfortable and they just spill their guts. And so all these people started talking to me about their sex lives and really needed help with it.
Okay.
And I was like, hey, why aren't other people talking about sex? Like, why am I the first person that they're able to have this conversation with?
Exactly.
And I actually, I'm a writer. I do a lot of things. And I met the other half of my podcast team through erotica, actually, because she recruited me to write erotica. And we started having these hilarious conversations. And I was like, we should do a podcast.
Hilarious is, it is hilarious. Your podcast, the Sex Symbol podcast, how long has that podcast actually been out there now?
We launched it October 27th of last year. So
Oh, wow. Okay.
only about 6 months.
And how's the response been?
It was slow to
Sure.
start.
Yep.
It's funny. People really want to listen, but nobody wants to tell anybody that they listen.
Sure.
Podcasts spread by word of mouth.
Of course.
So
Of course.
it has picked up quite a bit of steam, though. So I'm hoping that it keeps growing.
Yeah. I mean, with Monty and the Pharaoh YouTube channel, we are trying to expand, so to speak, our content, not just wrestling and sports, but we do a lot of current events. And this is where I kind of came in because originally my What a Day with Joe Lowry was current events, entertainment, news, sports, whatever, kind of a mishmash of everything. And I came across your podcast on social media, and I listened to a little bit of it, and I was like, these people need to come on Monty and the Pharaoh, and we need to do some talking. So, I don't know which way to go here. I mean, I guess the first thing I could probably ask you is, what do women talk about in regards to sex when men aren't around? That's hilarious. I mean, give us some
Uh,
ideas of what you guys talk about.
well, you know, people think that we all just like become like sexually active and then we just know, like people take it
Right.
for granted, right? Because pop culture, movies, books, everybody, like all these people are sexual dynamos like in these movies,
Sure.
that is a fairy tale, which leads to a lot of discontent in the bedroom.
Sure.
And who else are you going to talk about it? I mean, talk about it with guys occasionally talk to each other about it, although no offense, but I think some of guys when they talk it's more like a fish story like, oh yeah, like this happened.
Locker room talk, right? You're talking about like
Yeah,
locker
it's
room
like
talk, things like
penthouse
that.
forum.
Sure.
But women don't talk about it quite the same way. I do think that people are getting more comfortable with it, and so there is kind of maybe some locker room talk for women.
Sure.
However, a lot of it is just like you see, like Sex in the City was super popular
Oh yeah.
because
I even watched Sex
they
and the City. I loved it. Yeah.
they just openly they talked about their lives, but a lot
Yeah.
of it was about sex, and people were so enthralled by it because this group of women was talking about sex really graphically. And
I think Miranda was talking more about it than anybody, but sure.
yeah, I do. I mean, she was making everyone uncomfortable, right? Like
Sure.
she
Oh
was,
yeah.
but a lot of people really wanted to be her or channel that confidence and that power. And it's like, so how do you change discontent in the bedroom if no one ever talks about it?
Sure.
And
Exactly.
and Thula and I were having these conversations about sex, all kinds of different things. Like, and it started around erotica. She's like, "Hey, can you write a story about this, that, and the other?" And I'm like, "Yeah, give me 20 minutes. I'll write a story." And the conversations that we were having on a daily basis were just so funny
Sure.
that but I don't think people really understand if you're super comfortable with your friend, like how graphic and hilarious those get.
Right. Well, give me an example. Give us an
Okay.
example of something. If a guy was listening, would probably like be
Yeah.
floored at listening to two women talk about sex if a guy wasn't around. But let's say I'm a fly on the wall and you're having a conversation about sex. What would be said? Just give us an
Well,
idea.
so from one of our podcasts, we talked about size matters. It is our most listened to podcast. And the hot take at the end of the show is that hustle matters. Like
Sure.
not so much size, but people think it's size. So we go into all these details about like, have you been with a guy that's big? Because maybe you just haven't like, sampled the wares. Like, have you been
Right.
with someone medium or small? Like, what
Sure.
is it? And I think guys would be shocked about that because like, oh my gosh, the women are comparing notes. Please don't let them compare notes. And
No.
or the one we talked about, sword swallowing.
Oh
Like,
God.
I did some research and training for that one. Like I wanted to be able to bring that skill home to my husband, and I don't think people were prepared for the
Are you talking
amount of
about
training it
actual
took.
sword swallowing? Actual sword?
No.
Oh, okay. Okay. I'm sorry. I got lost there for a second. Okay. Gotcha. Okay. So you brought that home?
Yeah.
Yeah. How'd that work out?
It was an impressive trick, but just like most people don't live in the highlight reel, right?
Right.
ESPN shows those clips, and most people don't live in the highlight reel. We live in the everyday reality of life. Just
Right.
about the time you get down to the nitty-gritty, there's a kid knocking on the door like, "Hey, we're out of nacho cheese. Can I put that on their grocery list?" I'm like, "I don't fucking care." Like,
Oh
we're
my
busy.
goodness. Wow. Okay. So you did send me something. We have some of your highest rated podcasts. I'm going to just show them up on the screen there. And let me get my little banner out of the way here. And boy, oh boy. So these are your top 5 episodes of all times.
Yeah.
Um, when size matters, you kind of touched upon that. Let's go to this one here. This would be interesting. How do women watch porn? Like
Okay.
like give me an example of what your podcast would be about how women watch porn.
Right. So we were talking, Anthil and I were talking about the differences. Like, men are really focused on like the zeroed in shot of like penetration, and it's very the story is very loose and ridiculous.
Okay.
He shows up with the pizza and she's like, "Oh, I don't have my wallet." Um,
Oh,
when
there's a
women
storyline in these things. I didn't get that, but okay.
I mean, yeah, well, a lot of men and women are very different about how they consume their porn. And there are these companies that are cropping up that are like porn made for women, has more of a storyline.
Okay.
Um, but a lot of women get distracted by extraneous details.
Okay.
So it's like, why is that guy still wearing his socks?
Ooh. Okay.
And it's like, there's all this going on. That's not why we're watching this. We're watching it for this other, but it's like, I'm concerned. Like, he's halfway through this. Why are the socks still on? Or like, his glasses are on. Is he going to take those off? Are they going to get dirty? Is there something, like there's all these details going on because we have a lot of things going on in our mind. Like,
Sure.
it
Everybody
doesn't
does.
shut
Sure. Yeah.
off.
Yeah.
Well, you know, for behaviorally, if you're very task oriented, everything shuts off except your need to accomplish that task. Like for a
Okay.
lot of men, women don't do that. Like our brain doesn't shut off to accomplish that task. We have all these baseline systems running. Like, you know, there's a gardener outside. Is he looking in the window? Why is there a gardener outside? Like these things. And it's so distracting from what's going on. And I think that's why a lot of women are seeking out these porn made for women by women.
I am blushing in a sense. Somebody just said, I think Joe is blushing, LOL. But we do have a question. Joe Myers,
Yeah.
Baby Cakes, Vita, do you ever talk about the avoidance or fear of intimacy?
We
Does that
haven't
ever come up?
yet.
Okay.
We haven't yet. I'm sure it will come up eventually. It's since ours is a comedy podcast, we really do try to keep things lighter.
Sure.
Um and that's difficult for a lot of people. Like there's a lot of like the avoidance of intimacy, there's sexual trauma, there's lots of things.
Sure.
And like as someone that was a teacher for a long time and is a coach now for people, like I can talk about that in our private practice, but it's like
Sure.
on the podcast we do try to keep it light, so we don't
But
really talk about
you want
avoiding.
to keep it entertaining as well, so to speak. I mean,
Right.
right. I mean, to
Now,
have a therapeutic environment on a podcast might not make it, very entertaining, but because you are a sex and intimacy coach, correct?
yeah.
Okay. And how long you been doing that for?
About 2 years. I've been in the coaching field about 2 years. And so it's like I said, people just tell me things and it kind of branched into that.
Sure. Now, is it like therapy? I mean, is it like you get a couple that comes in and you guys talk about sex or intimacy or that type of thing? Is that how that works?
Well, it could be one person, or sometimes I do work with couples, but think about this. Okay. So you
Okay.
have a coach,
Yeah.
you go to the coach, he teaches you how to shoot a layup, and you practice the layup, right?
Sure.
And then you go put it in the game, and then y'all come back and talk about how did it work in the game. And then like, okay, so maybe we need to do 2 dribbles on the approach instead of one. And then so a coach works like that. A therapist is going to say, you're not hitting this layup because
So
What
yeah,
happened before the game? Did you break up with your girlfriend? Did you break up with your boyfriend? It's like
yeah,
therapy does some deeper dives into emotional territories and
sure.
in trauma, and coaches are more problem solvers for what's happening
Plus, they have an
in real
outside
time.
opinion. They could see what probably the couple of the person does not see. Correct.
Yeah, because a lot of us, I mean, regardless if it's behavior, like you can't schedule your time right, or if it's sex, like we're too close to our problems a lot of time to see them. So we need someone who's outside of it to be like, hey, you just need to bend her leg back and put a pillow under her hips and you'll hit it every time.
There you go. That's quite a visual right there. Excellent. Let's see what another one here. Okay. Slutty Halloween. What did
Mhm.
that podcast entail? I would assume a lot of dress up, right? Is that
Well,
close?
it was that was our very first
Oh wow.
podcast episode,
Okay.
and we launched October 27th, so it was right around Halloween. And we were talking about when you go try to buy a Halloween costume, if you still do that, it's just nothing but slutty costumes.
Right.
And 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 Thula was talking about how she doesn't participate anymore in Halloween just because, like it's just she hands out candy, but she doesn't dress up or anything. And I'm like, you're
Sure.
missing out on a golden opportunity to go buy like slutty costumes.
Nurses, all that stuff, devils,
Yeah.
same old stuff. Or waitress, right? I've seen those
Yeah.
ones. So that's kind of neat, I guess. Slutty Halloween. I love the titles of some of these too, by the way. They're a riot. Spank me, daddy. I've been a bad girl. Do I dare
Yeah.
say daddy issues here? Like, what did that constitute? That
I
was
mean,
that
I
even a
guess
good word?
it could have been daddy issues. It could be, I mean, you could whatever you want to call your person. But it was really we were talking about spanking and about how there are so many people that get off on spanking now, but
Really?
there is like safety measures to think about when you're spanking, and they have conferences on this and they have classes on this, and that
They have
people just think that
conferences on spanking.
yeah.
Oh, come on, fill me in on this one. What
What do you think goes
spanking?
on
I
there?
mean, I don't get it. What's the teaching? Like, what's the syllabus on this?
Okay, so they have spankies, people that like to get spanked, and spankos, people that do the spanking. And
Okay.
at the conferences, you can, like, they do demonstrations because there are parts of your, like, if you want to play with your partner, this is impact play, but you don't want to leave lasting damage, there is an art to it. So you'll have to spank on certain parts of the butt,
Oh,
you
okay.
know, so that you don't like harm your partner past like just the spicy part.
Okay.
And they have demonstrations. People can line up to get spanked by a master spanker. Like there's all different kinds of things that
How
go
come I don't
on.
see
And
these advertised anywhere? I don't see these conferences advertised anywhere about this.
well, I imagine quite a bit happens in Vegas.
Oh,
But
okay.
most metropolitan areas and most kink clubs are really big
Sure.
on
Sure.
educating the masses so that people are not fumbling around in the dark, like harming each other.
Okay. I'm just trying to see some of the comments here. Joe Meyer says, "Daddy would be a him that owns you in the fun room and takes care of you like a daddy."
Yeah,
Yeah,
and so
pretty much.
in that kink dynamic, a daddy is more of a caregiver. It's a dominant in a dominant submissive relationship. He's more
Okay.
of a caregiver.
All right. Awesome. Let me just grab another one here real quick. Yeah, let me go. Okay. Let me see here. Sword swallowing and other party tricks. Okay, we did
Yeah.
talk a little bit about sword swallowing. I was actually thinking it was an actual sword swallowing, but I
No.
get the idea. What are some of the other tricks? Like, I'm just curious because please do tell.
Yeah. So sword swallowing, I'm talking about deep throating when you're giving oral.
Okay.
And again, people live in the highlight reel and they think this is a skill that they're going to need all the time. And I'm not trying to hurt anybody's feelings out there, but only about 7% of the male population has one big enough to like that you have to really have an advanced
Sure.
skill to do.
Okay.
So most people live in the bell curve, most people are average. So you can give a great blowjob without ever having to use this skill.
Okay.
But it is really about there's a technique to swallowing and breathing and all that at the same time.
I'm sure there is. Yeah. All right. What are some of the other tricks, though? I'm just curious. I'm sure the viewers
Well,
are curious too. They're just not saying anything.
you can play with their huevos. You can
Wavos.
there's lot yeah, there's lots of fun stuff back in the back door. You can play back there. There's prostate stimulation, but it does like to be a really really skilled lover, you have to
Sure.
do your research and you have to practice.
Right. And read a lot of erotica too, I would assume, right?
Um
I mean, I
okay,
grew up
so
I
I
grew up
write
I grew up on
erotica.
Penthouse Forum. So I
Yeah,
mean that
penthouse.
I give my age away when I say that, but you know, guys have that thing, that fantasy that this is how it's supposed to be. And, you know, but it really isn't when you think about it. It actually turns out to be something totally different.
Yeah. Penthouse forums, again, not trying to hurt anybody's feelings out
Sure.
there, but penthouse forums are essentially big fish stories bound
Sure.
in
Oh, yeah.
one book.
Yep.
And that's okay. But so it shows like it's kind of got this loose premise. It really mirrors porn. So erotica is more story based.
Sure.
Most of the consumers are women and it mirrors porn for women. Like there's the story we know is feelings. We know why all this stuff is happening. And if you like, I've never understood why some people are like, we just don't know what women want. And I'm like, go pick a fucking book up, man. Like there's a
Right.
billion-dollar industry.
Like the
Uh,
50 Shades of Grey book, that type of thing.
well, the BDSM community has a problem with 50 Shades of Grey because they don't think it represents them correctly. But I mean, a romance novel,
Sure.
there's tons of books. Like you can look all over TikTok and there's smutty book talk
Oh,
and
I'm
all
sure there's a
kinds of
lot.
stuff.
Yeah, I am
There,
sure.
but even, okay, so have you ever read a Robert Greene book? And this is not erotica, this is a real book.
Robert Greene.
Yeah, like
No,
48 Laws of Power, that kind of guy.
can't say that I have.
Okay, he wrote a book, one of his books, he does a lot of research and stuff. It's called The Art of Seduction.
Okay.
And one of his tenets of seduction is that you have to seduce a woman's mind to get her body on board. And if you look at erotica, it in the kind of industry that it is, like, you know, women need to have their minds seduced. Because remember, we got all this stuff going on up there. So you have to get this
Right.
on board before the rest of it, really wants to be there.
So do you find okay, so what I'm trying to grasp at is the fact that women obviously look at sex differently to with like men. Men look at it one way, women look at it another. So it's safe to say it's more complex with a woman because it's more emotional and a lot of stuff going upstairs, I'll say.
Right. It's way more cerebral. I
It's
mean,
okay, yeah,
now,
that's the word.
and I'm not taking anything away. Like everyone, it's like if you've met one person that's had sex, you've met one person that's had sex because everybody is different in what they like and what they don't like. But generally speaking, most women are more cerebral about it,
Sure.
and most guys are more primal brain about it.
Okay. Now I have another question. Looks like Joe Myers again is asking a question. Vida, what are the numbers on fetishes? I've only known one person with a fetish, and it was a little creepy, I won't lie. Not only did he freak over my feet and toes, but then I
Hmm.
realized it was all feet.
Hmm. Well, lots of people have lots of different kinks.
Sure.
You just bumped up in against someone that had a kink that you weren't really into.
Okay.
There are little quizzes that you can take that kind of shows you like an interest inventory, like what you may be into. And
Okay.
then you can kind of meet people that are also into that. And there are places to go meet. There's a website called FetLife,
Okay.
and that's where most kinksters like hang out. It's kind of like Facebook and a dating app for the kinky set. As with all things, be
Right.
careful.
Sure.
Um, and a lot of times like it's having those conversations when you first meet, And then that brings up the whole thing. Like, when do you have this conversation with a prospective partner, right? Do you have it on the first date, the third date? Like, so what's the dirtiest thing you've ever done? So I can see if I'm still into you,
Here,
like,
here's a questionnaire. Can you fill this out and get back to me?
yeah. And honestly, I think that would save people a lot of time.
Right. Okay. All right. So, as I'll touch upon the sex and intimacy coach. What are some of the most common issues I would say with a person in regards to sex, whether it's male or female? I'm sure both problems are different, but do you see a theme? Is there a generalization that you can come up with? What is the
Yeah.
most talked about or not talked about, I should say, when it comes to this?
Most people want to be safe, seen, and heard. And
Okay.
that's regardless if you're a man, woman, or something other.
Sure.
Safe, seen, and heard. So if you are in a relationship that is you're monogamous or poly or whatever, but still you're in a committed relationship, and we're not just talking about casual sex,
Sure.
most people in committed relationships struggle because they maybe aren't getting what they want, right?
And they're just afraid to
And
say it or
Mhm.
that type of thing. So you
Yeah, they're
provide that.
afraid to say it.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
They're afraid to say it because they don't want to hurt their partner's
Sure.
feelings. And then it's a two-way street. So I have to be willing to talk about it. My partner has to be willing to hear it,
Right.
without getting super defensive, and it's really all about packaging, but there's an art to it.
There is an art to it. That's for sure. So you said you were a high school teacher, a public high school teacher. I can only imagine some of the conversations that either you were a part of or perhaps overheard. You said you taught high school. Was it English?
Yeah, I taught high school
What
English
what
for a long
grade?
time.
Or was it all grades?
Well, ninth through 12th, but the
Okay,
last couple years that I taught English, just specifically English, I taught
sure.
seniors.
Right. Now, when I was growing up, in high school and so forth, I mean, y- y- I don't know, it wasn't really talked about except for the fact that, I grew up in a city, so it's all about teenage pregnancy,
Yeah.
practice safe sex, all that stuff. By the time my kids were in public high school, I don't think there was even any mention of this stuff. I think you had to do your own research. I think you had to do your own thing. I remember in sixth grade, we got a video
Yeah.
back in the day of this is how men and women are, and this is how intercourse is, and this is how a baby is made. And it was like a rite of passage. Once you saw the movie, you were all set, you're ready to go. And then off to middle school you went. But generational wise, do you see it? And I'm not sure you're from the Midwest, correct?
Yeah. Where all those tornadoes hit. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'm in Iowa, so I mean, I've only been here 2 years, and I'm getting tornado watches left and right all week, so it's kind of new to us. Are you safe now? You guys okay with the
Yeah.
tornadoes? Okay, cool. Um, but like, does it depend on like location, generational? Does the public school system now even talk about this stuff? Because I feel like it was talked about more back in the day than it is now.
Mhm.
It's almost like frowned upon. Like, no, don't talk about that. But then you have the internet, social media,
Yeah.
ultimate access to any type of sexual thing online, so to speak. Do you encounter differences like that? Do you see that in your work?
Yeah. I mean, so I was born in 1980 and I grew
Yep.
up during like the AIDS epidemic and
Sure.
everything. So
Yep.
so sex ed for me when I was in school, and our parents had to sign a waiver and everything for it, but
Oh
it
yeah.
was really about stopping the spread of AIDS. Like that was
Right.
what it was about.
Okay.
And and then also they didn't want teen pregnancy, but it was still about stopping AIDS.
Right.
And then but my husband, he's a little bit older than me. The only sex talk he ever got was his dad saying, "Don't get a girl pregnant, I'll kill you." That was it.
Yeah. That's a
So,
generational thing right there.
right.
Right. Yeah.
But then, like, my kids, there's nothing going on in schools. Nobody wants the liability of doing that. Now,
Right.
when I taught seniors, um, I taught in an area that was really low socioeconomic, had lots of teen pregnancy, had lots
Sure.
of STDs. And
Right.
so an outside agency came in and taught sex ed, and
Right.
it wasn't about abstinence because there's a lot of programs that preach that. It was about This is how you protect yourself.
Sure.
And but again, outside agency. And then I think there's issues too where people don't talk about it. But if we don't talk about sex, we don't empower our young people to protect themselves.
Sure.
They also don't know if they're being abused. So it's like we have to make sure that we're having these conversations. Now, like our podcast, that's super graphic and it's funny. And it's supposed to inspire people that are in safe situations to be able to
Sure.
talk about sex.
Right. And
But
entertaining. And
yeah,
entertaining. Sure.
and entertaining. But
Yeah.
in my, like, if I put on my super professional hat, like I can get really smart with people. And it's like, hey, if you want to change the conversation and help people protect themselves, it needs to start very young,
Right.
because kids are exposed to so many things now.
Yeah, the stigma is huge because I recall my daughter was a basketball player. She played high school ball, got a scholarship, college, all this stuff. She was a very well-rounded athlete, and she developed a lot of acne in her 9th and 10th grade years. And the doctor suggests put her on the pill; it'll help with that.
Yeah.
And as soon as I suggested that, even to her teammates and all that stuff, like the family members, they were all friends. They're like, oh no, then that gives them the right to be sexually active
Right.
and all that. And it's like, well, we weren't even on that. We
Right.
were thinking about breaking out. She played volleyball, she played
Yeah.
basketball, she played softball. She was constantly sweating. She was breaking out where she wore her hat and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And the stigma that surrounded, like, like, what is the big deal? We're doing it for a medical reason. We're not telling her
Yeah.
to go and have unprotected sex or whatever and all that stuff. But that stigma alone was just like, it was a little baffling at first until we had to explain to them, this
Right.
is why the doctor put her on birth control. And within a month or two, her acne cleared up and she was free and cleared. It was a self-esteem issue after a
Right.
while, because as an athlete and you go to awards and, you do outside
Mm-hmm.
curricular activities, you want to look decent. And, and I felt bad. And we addressed it early on. And it just that stigma. And I also have friends who are high school teachers, such as yourself, that, you get a 9th grade class and you go all the way 10th grade, 11th grade, 12th
Mm-hmm.
grade, you go, and the conversations change every year. You
Yeah.
could see the maturity or some people, the immaturity of that conversation. If you, it's that old thing. Oh, what I knew in 9th grade is nothing what I've known in 12th grade. And
Right.
so forth. And the same thing with life too. So, any other episodes you can tell our viewers that were pretty wild on you guys were getting
Oh,
into?
yeah.
I know I only put up the top 5, but you guys, if I go on, you had some funny titles. I'm trying to access it now, but you had some funny titles on your show. Let me see if I can get on there. But they
Yeah.
were kind of funny. They were cute. Let me see. Here we are.
I
And
write all those titles.
I love this one. Are you a sucker for a uniform? And how often do you call the fire department?
Yeah.
What was that one all about?
So, I'd recently watched Modern Family. It's
Okay.
a sitcom that's on,
Oh yeah.
and everybody on there thinks the fire department is really hot. So the mom has to call the fire department, and when she does, she goes and she changes her top and puts a little makeup on. And the dad's like, "Did you get dressed up for the fireman?" And then, so I was telling Anthula about it, and we were talking about how many people are a sucker for a man or woman in uniform. It is one of those things, like, there's always something that we really like, but
Sure.
generally servicemen or women, firemen, policemen, EMTs, stuff like that.
Right.
Even doctors, it's the costume, right? It's the
Doctors.
costume that kind of gets you going. And the fact that they might be a hero, oh my God.
That'll get you right. Thank you for your service. I get that one. Let me see. There was another one here. What will you look like during sex, and could you ever be a voyeur? This is from your
Yeah.
April 11th. Please do tell us, what was that one all about? What we look
So-
like during sex? I don't know. I mean, I know I don't look the same as I did when I was 20 years old. That's for sure. But
So Anthula went to the gym, and she was telling me this story about when she was a young woman, and these women who were in their like late 40s were telling her that as you get older, you don't want to be on top because all gravity takes over
oh,
all
okay.
your bits. And then she was telling me how it like warped her as a young woman. She was like, "Oh my gosh, like I can't be on top." And I'm like, who pays attention to that? Like I'm really focused on something else while
Sure.
sex is going on. But a lot of people get really neurotic about how they look. Like, oh, I can't do this because it makes my belly rolls go together.
Sure.
Or I don't want him to like take me from behind because then he might see all my cellulite. And it's like, girl, he is just happy to be invited to that party. So you
Right.
just like rock on with your bad self. But again, we don't teach enough body positivity to people to like
Especially
own.
with social media and body shaming now. I'm
Yeah.
sure. I mean, like I said, generational speaking, it's like, yeah, I don't know how kids nowadays go on with this stuff, but I mean, I can only imagine there's a lot of buildup and
Yeah.
most likely a lot of letdown at the end, no pun intended, but a lot of letdown at the end, like, oh, that's not what I envisioned. You know what I mean? That type of thing. But yeah, I mean, I see where you're coming with that one. So that was a different one there. Here's another good one. Sex toys part one. That time I broke my vagina.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So sex toys are a lot of people are scared of sex toys because they're like, if I bring them in, then maybe that means I'm not doing something right as a lover. And it's like, no, sex toys are just like, it's like putting sprinkles on a cupcake. Like you're just bringing it to the party. You're like, it makes
Added
make things
flavor. Added flavor.
added
Sure.
flavor. But
Yep.
with great power comes great responsibility, and you have to use them safely because
What are you running for president?
you can take yourself right out of the sex game for several weeks if you're like maybe it just felt too good and you just kept going.
Oh,
Um
geez.
there
Okay.
is a limit. Your body is just like, yes, and we're done.
What, you women aren't invincible like we thought you were? What, I mean, come
I
on.
mean, I can have it's the thing. Don't get mad because we can have multiple orgasms, but it tops out at a certain number.
Close to death, I would assume, right?
Yeah.
um,
Or breaking your vagina.
no breaking your vagina. And of course, part two, sex toys part two, which was just this past April. Toys for him so you don't end up with carpal tunnel or a lockjaw.
Yeah.
Oh boy. Carpal tunnel and lockjaw. Yeah, those are painful. That is for sure.
Yeah.
Um, okay, I'll be honest here. I will. I was cleaning out my son's room when he went off to college, and obviously, I grew up in a different generation.
Yeah.
But what I uncovered in his room, I was just scratching my head. I had no
Mm.
idea that there were certain sexual things in there for men
Yeah.
that men can use. I did not know what they were, and I was like, "Holy effing this! What is up with that?"
Well,
And
okay. My husband and I talk a lot about, and I talk about him a lot on the podcast. We talk a lot about the different things sexually, like toys,
sure,
stuff like that.
yeah,
And he is always complaining because there's just not as many toys for men as there are for women. But
okay,
that industry is really catching up because there's lots of they're accessibility aids, right?
sure.
They're just hey, if you are flying solo, we've got something for you, because even guys, I imagine if a guy jacked off all the time, like it's the whole joke about you can always tell which hand he uses because one forearm's bigger than the other. So
Really?
it's like,
Uh,
yeah, it's
okay.
like, so they have things like that, you like sleeves you can use for that.
Yeah.
But also if you're in a relationship, like you don't want your partner to end up with like tingly fingers, right?
Sure. Oh, yeah.
Because
Oh, yeah.
they've used their hand too much, or you know, uh as you age, like maybe your knees aren't what they're used to be. So there's no getting on your knees for that. So babe, we're going to have to lay in the bed. We'll have to do it sideways.
Now, in regards to your intimacy and coaching and all that so forth, all different ages do you get, or is it?
Um Generally, I don't do that for people that are under 18,
Oh,
just
obviously,
because,
I'm talking maybe like the older spectrum of things. I
oh,
mean,
yeah. Yeah, I
sure.
really do. I get people that are like, "I really want to do this, but I can't anymore." Like I was teasing about the knees, right?
Right.
So, problem solver here. I'm like, "Do you garden?" And the woman was like, "Yeah, why?" And I'm like, those pads they have at the gardening center so that you can work in your flower bed for a long time?" She goes, "Yeah." And I'm like, "Use one of those."
Wow.
And she
There you
came
go.
back and she was like, it worked like a champ. And I'm like,
There you go.
good. And when that stops working, we'll try something else.
People helping people. That's what it's all
That's
about,
right.
right? That's right. That's right. Well, in case you're just joining us, we are talking with the lovely Vita Carey from the Sex Symbol Podcast. And yes, folks, you're not seeing things. We are on the Monty and the Pharaoh YouTube channel. And we are talking sex tonight because we're trying to switch things up here. And if you like what you're hearing and so forth, feel free to hit that like button as well as subscribe. It's all free. I want to thank everybody for tuning in live and on the replay. Vita, a lot of people commenting and so forth. We were talking about the teenage pregnancy. We were told by our parents if we got in trouble, we would be kicked out. I moved out at
Yeah.
16 on my own volition. I got pregnant and married at 19, and my mom ended up begging me to go live with her. LOL. That it's tough. Do you find it that a lot of kids in high school do want to talk about sex because they don't know
Yes.
about it, or they think they know about it, or I'm the captain of the
Oh my gosh.
football
Okay.
team and all that stuff? So
The sex ed that we used to have at the school that I worked at, they would come in and talk to senior English because everyone had to take English their senior
sure.
year.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And I was in there for all of it. So I heard these conversations back and forth with this outside agency. And the kids are like, you really need to go talk to the middle schoolers. These were our seniors telling her.
Sure.
And then there's the thing about kids want to talk about that stuff and they need the information, because if you don't give them the information, they're getting it from each other. And who's to say that any
Right.
of them are reliable narrators? Like, we teach kids how to cross the street. You
Right.
don't just send them out into the world and let them figure that out on their
Sure.
own. And
Yeah.
like, well, I know that kid got run over, but the other ones will learn. So we're but we're so afraid to have a conversation about sex. And then people have really hard time having a conversation about sex with getting all giggly and weird.
Right.
And
Plus nerves.
maybe,
Nerves.
right, it's nerves,
Yeah.
but nobody's been like, hey, it's okay to talk about this. We don't need to talk about it everywhere. Like, there's a time and a
Sure.
place.
A
But
classroom seems like the most appropriate when you think about it. So
right. I mean, and I worked really closely as I started moving up the ladder into administration with like the head of school nurses and
sure.
stuff. And she also did some safe sex things. Kids would come talk to her. And the things that they would bring to her, like, hey, sex really hurts. And she goes, so are you using lube?
Right.
And they're like, what's that?
Oh.
And then she goes, and then the kid was like, I mean, sometimes it gets messy, but we just wipe all of that stuff off. And she goes, oh no, you need that, but these are things that they're like, if no one tells them, they're just left to figure it out.
Yeah, it's they're left to their own fruition. So they're like, oh my God, what do I do? I get it. Yeah, that's a tough one. I mean, so obviously, are there any measures that you know of, especially in your neck of the woods, to combat this in the classroom, as opposed to, after school and all that stuff? Is there anything in place that you know of?
There's lots of agencies that you can just, I mean, honestly, you just Google sex ed. If you are not comfortable having that conversation with your kid,
Right.
which lots of people aren't,
Right.
and Google it, sex ed classes. A lot of health departments will have free sex ed classes. And because the health department is the one that is seeing like the fruits
Oh,
of
yeah.
this uneducated
Mhm.
labor, like they're giving free STD tests, they're handing out condoms, like they're doing all this stuff because there is the world that people want to live in, right?
Right.
This white picket fence and no teen pregnancies happen. And like, it's the highlight reel that we see on social media and stuff like that. And then there
Nice.
is the actual world we live in where kids have sex.
Yeah. Oh no, I remember talking to my kids in, I want to say middle school, probably freshmen, and we'd be eating dinner, even if it was family dinner, and I would just blatantly come out and say it, and they would be like, "Dad," and I'd be like, "What?
Yeah.
How else do you want to talk about it? We're not going to talk about it." Like, I'm kind of like the dad that was like, "Okay, what's going on? Are you yes or no? Whatever. Let's do what we got to do to make do you know what you're doing and so forth." So they
Yeah.
were embarrassed by it, but I think overall they felt relieved after a while. And funny
Yeah.
story, when I was a kid growing up at a Halloween party, I had a Halloween party once, I think it was like 5th or 6th grade, And the party was over, and everybody's waiting for their parents to show up. And my father, obviously, had a couple too many. Got up on the coffee table and was trying to entertain the kids. He's like, "What do you want to talk about?" And somebody yelled out, "Sex." He's like, "Okay, what do you want to know?" And like all of a sudden, my mother come running in the room. "Don't say nothing. Don't. What are you doing? You're gonna
Yeah.
traumatize these kids." And for the next 10 years, I was known as, "Oh, you got to hang out with Joe. His father likes to talk sex," and just like this crazy. But it was just funny at the time. But I can't imagine that happening now. I mean, people are like
Yeah.
lawsuits and everything else. And
Oh,
like I
yeah.
said, a generational thing type.
Right.
So that was kind of funny with that one. All right. So one more I was intrigued by
Yeah.
for a title was anal sex in landing a plane.
Yeah.
Please do tell.
Okay. So there's these studies have been shown that like anal sex is like the kinkiest thing that most people do. Like that is the Mount Vesuvius of their sex play. We're going to have anal sex. And so anal sex really is not as kinky as people think it is because it's pretty mainstream now.
Yeah.
But again, to do it where you are actually giving pleasure and not hurting your partner, there's research and prep work and all this stuff to do. And my whole point when I created that title was like anal sex is essentially like landing a plane. Like you need to have like, okay, back up, go slower, like a little bit further. Like, nope, 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 too much, too much. Like there's just, it's really not as sexy as people make it out to be. But again, it's a lot of times it's not one of those things that you're doing every single time you have sex.
Right.
But it's about exploring. Like you have to be able to explore your own body so that you know what you like and what you don't like.
Yeah.
So
Where
that
your
when you
limits are
get
and
with
so
a
forth,
partner
right?
and then
Okay.
you ask them, what do you like? What do you not like?
Yeah, I just that is probably one of the best things about your podcast that I'm looking at is the titles that you guys use, and glory holes and other holes in the wall, things like that. Talk dirty to me or at least sext me, sexy
Yeah,
side hustles. I mean, who comes up with these titles?
I do.
Oh, you do. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, for anybody that doesn't know, Anthula, which is a very unique name, by the way, you don't hear
Yeah.
that name very often. She's your other half. She's located where?
Anthula is Canadian. She
Okay.
lives in Canada, and it was just part of the fun of us talking about sex was that I was constantly embarrassing her or that she had questions. And so that was the deal, like, oh my gosh, we should have a podcast. This would be hilarious. And so I don't tell her what the podcast is going to be about until we show up to shoot it. And
So you want
sometimes,
that genuine
yeah,
reaction. Okay.
yeah. So sometimes she doesn't know about it until I say the intro. Like, and to this week, we're talking all about this. And she'll just feel like, I have no words. It takes her a minute to formulate. So,
Is that kind of a reason why she didn't want to come on tonight? She didn't.
no, she really is
Okay.
traveling.
She's
She's,
travel. Okay.
she's, taking care of some family business. So it was just
Oh, that's
like,
good.
I'll go. I don't have a problem talking about this stuff.
That is so funny. That is so funny. Well, we're gonna wrap it up here. It looks like a lot of people here are teetering off and on and so forth. But real quickly, I do have you sent me something here. This is you, sex and
Yes.
intimacy coaching with Vita Carey. What is the slot? What is the ND Outlaw? What is that? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, Indie Out Loud is the company my friend and I do together where we do coaching. Not Anthula, this is a different
Sure.
connection. Danielle Ralston and I, and she started it, and I work for her. We do coaching for neurodivergent adults, for autism, ADHD, dyslexia, dyspraxia, bipolar
Oh wow.
disorder,
Okay.
addiction,
Yep.
veterans with post traumatic stress, like people with post traumatic stress. And then I am the one on staff that does sex and intimacy coaching.
Nice. Now, do you do a lot of this, obviously via Zoom and stuff like that? Do you talk to people throughout the country?
Yeah, actually, it's worldwide. Like I
Oh wow.
have
Okay.
some clients in Australia, which is always kind of
Oh,
fun. I
nice.
get to hear different accents. But
Nice.
yeah, it's all via Zoom. We have multiple tiers from free all the way up to like $450 a month for people that really want a lot
Oh,
of
that's really good.
interaction.
That's good. Real quickly, I always have to guess, how can they reach you on social media?
Oh yeah. Just if you type in the neurodivergent teacher or Vita Carey, all my stuff is going to pop up.
Okay.
And I probably have outed myself as ever being able to be a teacher again, because I think the podcast is like the fourth thing that comes up.
Oh, geez. Oh, wow. Now, does the school that you used to work at now, they know you have this podcast and everything? Friends,
I
colleagues?
think it's getting ready to be like a known fact, but people
Really?
really didn't know. Like my mom knew, and she was just like, I can't believe you're doing that.
Like I said, when I started the show up, I go, a lot of people like to read about it, like to watch it, but when it comes to talking about it, it's a different thing. So,
Yeah.
but I do want to thank you so much for taking the time to come on the Joe WhattaDay Lowry show. It's been a great having you. Hopefully next time we can revisit this and we can get in Thularon. It'd be great to see you two in action together. But
Yeah.
it's sexsymbolpodcast.com, correct? If I'm looking at that,
Yeah.
correct?
Sex symbol
Sex symbol,
podcast.com.
yep. You're on X, social media, Facebook, all that stuff. But again, I want to thank you so much. Do you have any last quick words of wisdom for anybody out there?
Oh, yes. Yes. So whatever you do, make sure that you and your partner feel safe, seen, and heard. And just go out there and explore. If you don't know what you want, they definitely don't know what you want.
That's good stuff. Thank you so much, Vita. And that's going to do it for us here for WhattaDay with Joe Lowry. I want to thank everybody that tuned in live and on the replay in the chat. You get a lot of thank you, Vita. Thanks for coming on.
Oh,
We have
you're
a great
welcome.
family here. You can probably see the chats on the replay on YouTube. If you enjoyed this programming, like I said before, hit that like and subscribe button. It's free. It's the best way to support Monty and the Pharaoh YouTube channel and so forth. So, Vita, thank you again for coming on. I know I say thank you a lot, but I'm very grateful for you to come on the show tonight. We really mixed it up a bit, and I'm sure we'll stay in touch and all that. And
Yeah.
if we have any questions that come in afterwards, I'll forward them to you and so forth. But thank you so much.
You're welcome.
All right, folks, that's going to do it for me. I hope everyone has a WhattaDay Wednesday. I'm Joe Lowry. What a day.